One of the most controversial subjects in recent years in the field of hypnosis is the Russian scam video real? Now, before you watch this particular segment of our video, I recommend you pop on the internet, and if you haven't seen it, search for Russian scam. Now, in this video, one person allegedly hypnotizes another and gets them to give their wallet, their keys, their cell phone, etc. Not once, but twice. The question is this real? Is this a setup? Well, watch the video where I explain exactly how this could be done. What you have just learned is legendary. It's probably the most talked about, the induction that has the most excitement around it in history. People didn't believe it when Erickson did it. If you go on the internet and look in forums, there are thousands of posts about how to do the Erickson handshake interrupt, how to do the ambiguous touch induction. Right? You've just learned it. Now we're going to take a look at something that is also incredibly legendary. And I want you to watch it first.
Excuse me, do you know which way the actual pleasure beach is, the fun fair?
The pleasure beach? I'm not really from round here. I think if you're for the main one, if you follow down, just go down this road here. Yeah. Keep going, and it's on your left-hand side.
So it's basically it is down there.
Yeah.
That's the tower, isn't it? But it's you don't mind me asking, do you?
No.
No, you're happy to give that to me. Okay, so it's down there. Yeah. Right. All right. Sorry about that. Cheers. Thanks ever so much. Yeah. Great. So it's just down that way. Can you just grab that just for a second? Can I just grab your watch and then you've got a phone on you as well. That'd be terrific. Can I just grab your thanks. I'll take that off. Lovely. Cheers. I'll just grab your phone as well and your house keys. Thank you. Thank you very much. All right, so it's just literally just down there. Yeah? Lovely, I'll grab that. So it's straight down there and...
Keep going on your left-hand side as you go further down the road there.
All right, lovely. Thanks ever so much. Cheers, mate. Thanks. Thank you, you're fine. Thank you. Oh, thank you very much. Oh, thank you. Sorry.
It's difficult to explain because somehow it felt natural to give them to him.
Oh, I'm sorry, did I...
Until I got a few yards down the road, and then I started to think, what's happening here?
Just hold that a second. Cheers. Right, I'll just grab the others back off you so I can keep them. Cheers. Thanks ever so much. Thank you. Cheers. I think you're heading that way, man. Thanks ever so much. Cheers.
That's a little scary.
A little scary, right? Now, Darren Brown is a mentalist, among other things. We don't know how he's doing this. It may all be a trick, or it may be NLP and hypnosis. So I took a look at this video and I analyzed it to figure out what he was doing in terms of NLP and hypnosis. Now, I don't suppose you're going to go out and take anybody's wallet, are you? Their cell phone, yes, but no wallets. But would you like to know how it works?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, you discovered when you were doing some of those inductions that you've done earlier that it's at first difficult to layer things on top of one another. So, okay, I have this movement that I do, but then I forget to do the words. Okay, I've got the words, but I didn't get the movement right. This is a multi-layered thing. So it doesn't come easily just like that right at once. But it doesn't take very much practice. Like those things, if you remember what driving a car was like when you started out, it seemed like there was 1,000 things to think of. You had to figure out how to turn the wheel just to stay in your lane. Here's the turn signal, and there's the brake pedal, and the accelerator. I've got them on the wrong side because I've been driving left-handed, left-footed. After a while, it came naturally. So this is the same way. So let's I'm going to take a look, take you through step by step about what he does here. This is how he starts. One of the first things he does is generate rapport. Now, if you know anything about NLP, you know that you can create rapport by matching somebody's physiology, right? You breathe the same rate that they breathe. You stand or sit the same way they stand or sit. You move, your tonality matches, the rhythm of your speech matches their speech. It's a very powerful thing. What's that, Wayne? You mirror or match, as it's called in NLP. So did you notice he came in, and one of the first things he did was point. You see the other guy's arm come up? Their arms went up almost in unison. That means rapport. Now, I don't know if he did anything to generate rapport or whether he was just checking to see if it was naturally there. Because he wants to know, can he lead this person? So he took a motion. When that guy took a motion up, he said internally, I would imagine, this guy's following my suggestions, verbal or not. Now, I'm going to tell you a way to generate rapport that I think is incredibly powerful. And it's a little secret to doing it. And I haven't heard about this secret in very many places. So here it is. If you want rapport, assume you have it. Assume you have it. The Schwarzenegger technique. So, there's a little mental trick that I use to do this, and it's not thinking I'm king of the world. That was the other one. It is imagine that it's your best friend that's sitting across from you or standing across from you, but you're playing a little game. Your little game is that you're pretending not to know each other. So now think about this. If I was to meet Dennis for the first time, and I didn't know him, it would be kind of like this. Oh, hello, Dennis. My name's Keith. How are you?
I'm fine.
Okay. Now, what happens if I pretend he's my best friend, which he's not. He's at least third down the list. But what if I were to pretend he was my best friend, and I was pretending that we were playing a game?
They feel it.
You feel it, right? Hey, it's good to see you.
Hi, my name's Dennis.
Yeah, my name's Keith. Does it feel different?
It does.
What does it feel like?
It feels connected. It feels very warm. The smile just lightened everything. That's where I wanted to go.
So try this for just 10 seconds. Turn around and greet somebody like you've never met them, and then pretend they're your best friend and that you're playing this game that you don't know each other. Go ahead and try it. Greet each other. Did you feel it?
Yeah.
It can be an amazing difference, right? Now, when you are doing street hypnosis, it's important to generate rapport very quickly. You can do the matching, the mirroring stuff where you mirror their body, their breathing, their rate of speech. If somebody comes up to you and they're talking very slowly, it's probably very important to talk slowly. In fact, I had a guy call me a few weeks ago. He'd bought a program of mine called the Practical Guide to Rapport and Advanced Rapport. And he was giving presentations to his CO. He'd been in Iraq, and it was his job to kind of rework procedures that the soldiers over there did. So he would figure out something that he thought would save lives. Then he would present it to his CO. The guy wasn't taking any of his suggestions. And he thought people might be dying because of this. He called me up and he said, look, I don't know what to do. But he said it about like this. He said, Keith, I have your program, and I still need some help on generating rapport. I don't know what to do. What is it that I should do? And I said to him, I said, well, I'm not there in your situation, but I'll tell you this. I suspect that if you match their voice rate of speed a little closer to your CO's, you will close the deal. Here's what I suggest to you. Go out and just record some conversations. People talking at different speeds, and then practice those. Do that for a couple of days, and you will have incredible flexibility in how you can talk. He called me back up. You know, I just thought, well, what the heck, I gave him some advice. He called me up a couple of weeks later and said it was like magic. His life had changed, right? Sometimes a very small thing will make a huge difference. So I encourage you to do all that matching and mirroring, making sure you match their voice tone, their pace. But if you want to do it quickly, assume rapport. They're your best buddy. And you're just playing a little game. Okay? You can check for some sort of behavioral lead like Darren Brown did, where he stepped back to see if the guy would step with him. He raised his hand to see if the guy would raise his hand. He doesn't do that every time he does this. The next thing he did, if you have rapport with somebody and you generate an emotional state, what are they going to do?
Respond.
They're going to respond in some way. So what he does is he generates confusion. And you know how the handshake interrupt generates confusion. You put someone into confusion, they become more open to suggestion. Now he just generated confusion by being confused. He would go, do you know the way to the pleasure beach, the fun fair? And of course the guy was confused anyway because he didn't know. I'm not from around here. You know, that was the worst accent I've ever heard. But pointing this way, Darren Brown says, so that way's the tower, but this way is the... Just confusion. Okay? So he created confusion. Now, as a teacher, and maybe this is a little different than you're used to thinking about teachers, but as a teacher, I spend part of every day figuring out how I can generate confusion. Because I know that a confused mind is an open mind. Right? That's when you can really get suggestions in. So you can consider ways that you can generate confusion as well, besides just confusing language and ambiguous touch. The next thing that he does, or he does all these things almost simultaneously. He opens a context. He opens a subject. And we'll explain why this is important in a minute. Which way to the pleasure beach? I don't know what a pleasure beach is, but I like those two words. Okay, everybody with me?
Let's go to the beach.
Let's go to the pleasure beach. So, walks up, generates rapport, checks if the guy's following his suggestions, creates confusion, opens up a context. His context creates the confusion as well. Which way? Nobody knows which way. Here's what happens when you do something called stack realities. Okay, if I start to say, you know, what you just said reminds me about my grandfather, my uncle, and his cousin. And they were walking to go fishing at this little pond that I used to fish at as a boy. And as a boy, when I fished there with my cousin, I used to think about my uncle, my grandfather, and my uncle's cousin. Now, when we caught a fish, it was interesting because I began to think about what that fish's life must have been like. And you see how I'm opening up realities?
Yeah. So that is the open loop?
Yeah. I'm starting stories and never finishing them. Right?
Thank you.
Now, what tends to happen is if you open contexts and stack them on top of one another, the deeper you go, the deeper they go. The stuff that you say down here in these stories that are in the middle tends to drop out of consciousness. And it tends to create amnesia for it. Okay? So he's opening up a...
Zone out.
They zone out. They don't remember it. There's a wonderful story about a guy who was experimenting with post-hypnotic suggestions. And this kind of speaks to the question of how long do they last. And so he had a friend of his who was going to be at a dinner party. It was a woman. And he hypnotized her and suggested something outlandish. He said, well, I'll tell you what, in the middle of the dinner party, at some specific cue, you're going to stuff a bunch of flowers in a shoe and put them in the middle of the table. There's no possible explanation for this, right? So in the middle of the dinner, she gets up, takes her shoe off, stuffs the flowers in the middle of the shoe, and puts them in there. And so he says to her, what are you doing? And she says, oh, I'm just a little thing. I'm just curious. He says, could your reason possibly be for putting flowers in the middle of the shoe? She says, well, you know, I have a vase at home that's shaped a little bit like this, and I wanted to see what it looked like with flowers in it. He said, no, I hypnotized you and gave you a post-hypnotic suggestion. She said, no. I just want to see what the flowers look like in the vase. And in fact, she started to argue with him. And so he eventually dropped the subject. So when you give somebody a post-hypnotic suggestion and you create amnesia for it, it begins to seem to them like a normal part of their behavior. Now when I tell that story, people start to say, some of them say, well, that's scary. And then I say, but that's how you are. The stuff that you're doing in your life right now is as a result of hypnotic suggestions. Maybe that took place in childhood. Maybe that took place at a later part. Maybe that you made through dropping behavior into your unconscious. When we talk about these units of behavior like a handshake interrupt, the reason that you can interrupt a handshake and people go into trance is because it's seen by the unconscious as one unit of behavior. Well, guess what? If you've had to ever teach a kid how to tie a pair of shoes, tie shoelaces, you really don't tie shoes. You understand that you don't know how to do it. You just do it. It goes like this. In your mind, it's one unit. But at some point, you went, I got to go over, under, around. I got to make two big loops, pull the loops around and through, right? Then you forget it. It drops into unconsciousness. It is one unit of behavior. If you get interrupted in the middle of tying your shoe, you'll go, what? There'll be a good 2 or 3 seconds where you don't know what on earth to do, unless you've taught someone to tie it. When you teach someone consciously, you have to go back, bring it up consciously, break it down step by step. So any behavior that the unconscious sees as one unit of behavior, if we break it in the middle, no instructions there. We get to provide the instructions. So, and that's why the handshake works. That's how driving works. Now, once you get a little bit of confusion, you want to start embedding suggestions. Now, we talked a little bit about embedded suggestions today, and the truth is, for most embedded suggestions, you need to establish a pattern. So I taught you to establish a pattern of pausing, then landing on the phrase with a certain tonality, and then pausing again. Well, Darren Brown doesn't really have time to do that. So he just kind of fires suggestions in a reasonably commanding tonality, but not harsh. And what he does, he says, you don't mind giving me you don't mind telling me where it is, do you? Oh, no, 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 no. You don't mind giving that to me, giving that to me. He points back and forth at the guy's wrist when he does this. You don't mind if you give that to me, give that to me. Oh, no, 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 I don't mind. He started embedding suggestions. He's gotten agreement from that guy to follow his suggestions as well. Oh, no, no, that's fine, yes. There's another video of his where, oh, and he says it later on. Just he fires commands in. You're fine. Did you hear that? You're fine. You're heading that way, I believe. And did you see that how the guy went, yeah, I guess I don't know where I'm heading. Well, that makes sense. I'm heading that way. Let's go. Okay, so embedding suggestions agreement. Pattern interrupt, then, with the handshake. Now, you don't have to do this with a handshake. You can do this with any kind of pattern interrupt, okay? But he goes up for the handshake, interrupts it, grabs the guy's hand, just talking nonsense while he's grabbing the guy's hand, just enough to occupy his conscious, puts a water bottle in it. The guy's arm is cataleptic. So, he's gotten rapport. He's confused the guy. He's fired in suggestions to give him stuff. He's put him in catalepsy. He's got hypnosis. And then and by the way, the handshake is the second context that he opens up. So first it's directions. Second is the handshake. Boom, he stops it right smack in the middle. And then he starts giving direct suggestions. Just give me your wallet. Give me your keys. Give me your cell phone.
And is the bottle like an anchor for this whole thing?
Yeah, and it can be. We'll get to that later, okay? So he's cataleptic, arm's cataleptic. Now, Dave, I'll point out that to me, may have been similar to what you were seeing when people were doing the ambiguous touch induction. It's like, that doesn't look like hypnosis. He's just standing there with a bottle in his hand. So as you expand your idea about what hypnosis is and begin to recognize more and more signs of hypnosis out in the world, you'll begin to understand that there are many, many opportunities to give suggestions. Now me, I have people I like and other people. The people that I don't like, I generally just, I don't want to deal with them at all. The people I do like, there are wonderful opportunities to give suggestions. Aren't there? You're doing fine. Things are great, getting healthier. Okay, so, everybody with me so far? I like hypnosis a lot. And so when people say, well, are you going to hypnotize somebody against their will? I have a very, very broad view of hypnosis. You ask how long hypnotic suggestions last? Well, how long have you been flipping off people that cut you off in traffic? 40 years? Somewhere somebody taught you, not you. Somewhere somebody taught somebody that you're supposed to be angry when somebody cuts you off in traffic. So you have an emotional response. It's a conditioned response which happened in hypnosis. Been going on for years. That's how I view hypnosis. Hypnosis is happening all the time. It's just a matter of recognizing it and then beginning to utilize it more effectively.
Free will is an illusion?
No. Again, I view it more as an invitation. Okay.
An invitation for the unconscious to participate. That's what you said.
An invitation for the unconscious to participate and hand me its wallet. Okay, he closes the interrupt, closes the initial loop, the directions, embeds a suggestion that says you're fine. Now remember, you open up this loop, where's the pleasure beach? You open up the loop with the handshake interrupt, direct suggestions down here, closes the handshake. Now when you do a handshake interrupt, if it's done very, very well and artful, what happens when you close the interrupt by shaking the hand is that sometimes what happened in between here and here drops out of consciousness. Again, the unconscious views a handshake as one unit of behavior. So nothing could have happened in there. So it goes, and we've all had those experiences, right? Where something happens and you go, what was that? Oh, well, that was weird. And then you just kind of walk off. Did you see what that guy was doing in his mind? He was like, that was strange. And he walks off. Now, in this particular case, it didn't create enough amnesia to last for very long. But you could. Now, Skip was talking about, I was doing this thing with stories where I was stacking these realities and opening up loops and showing them how to create amnesia in a class. And because it's useful sometimes for hypnotic suggestions to have amnesia. Because what can the conscious mind argue with if it doesn't know it's there? Right? So, he closes the interrupt, boom. Closes the initial context, oh, so it's right over there, okay, thank you, boom, boom, boom. They're closed, you're fine. One more suggestion thrown in there, and off he goes. Got it?